And so back with Big Little Lies, we have Ed and Madeline showing up for the fundraiser, seemingly on better terms. But then the fundraiser gets hella complicated for Issa. You see Lawrence is there and they're doing better since he found a job, but then the old fling Daniel shows up. Aw, man.
Wait, what, Chad? What happened in the middle of your analysis?
What are you talking about?
You were talking about Big Little Lies, and now all of a sudden you're talking about a completely different plot. In fact, I think you're talking about a completely different show. Is that Insecure?
Psh, you just don't understand it, Brandon. You gotta remember that Issa planned it all, and so it fits. Perhaps you need to watch my new video, Insecure Big Little Lies Timeline Explained. It'll clear everything up for you.
But you can't just switch plots in the middle and expect everything to make sense with some grand conspiracy theory.
And we open our story with Actually, no. We open our story with Ford talking to old Bill. In this scene, Ford tells a story of his father taking in an old greyhound. One day the dog ends up getting loose and kills a cat. The greyhound spent his whole life running in circles, chasing a piece of felt, and it finally caught the thing it always wanted to catch, and it didn't know what to do. I suppose this story refers to both hosts and humans, that we exist in routines striving for something, but we don't really know what we'll do if we actually achieve it.
Speaking of felt, look how good old Bill's hat looks after 35 years. Water is dripping everywhere, but his hat, pristine. The Scotchguard in the future must be incredible.
And then we get to Dolores. Now this seems to be modern Dolores, as no one is around her. She was perhaps last seen racing away from her farm, having killed Rebus, though there's a pretty strong argument that modern Dolores was last seen at the village of Las Mudas last episode. She was at a well with no one there, and then Lawrence's daughter magically appeared. So it seems that Dolores is retracing her steps from her adventure with William and experiencing flashbacks along the way.
Okay, if she's retracing her steps, where's the security team that was supposed to pick her up? William shooed away the man from 30 years ago, but what about the modern security guy that Stubbs sent out?
Well, I do think Dolores gets picked up later.
Later? Security's gotten slower over the course of 30 years?
Anyway, Dolores has some flashbacks of Escalante, and then she's back with William overlooking the city of Pariah. Logan gives some classic establishing exposition while overlooking a city, and then William asks Dolores if she's okay, which honestly could be a drinking game considering how many times this happens. They then make it into the city of Pariah, which seems to be a city of orgies and bowls of meat. Everyone's dressed as if it's Day of the Dead, not realizing that Day of the Dead is perhaps the most boring holiday of all time.
What, you don't like having a picnic in a graveyard with Grandma?
The Confederados then arrive, which Dolores describes as Confederates who refused to surrender at the end of the war.
Okay, so the park is thematically set after 1865, the end of the American Civil War. Except why the hell did Logan and William run into Union soldiers right off the train in Sweetwater in the second episode? They said they were heading to the seat of war.
Well, I guess they're talking about a different war? I mean, the Confederados seem to be working as mercenaries in some sort of war south of the border.
What, is everyone involved in the Second French Intervention in Mexico? Why would Union soldiers be heading there? But let's assume that the year is 1866 and both the Union and the Confederados are involved in the Mexican-French conflict. Logan gets really excited as the Confederados are a chance to get to a juicy war story. In fact, getting to the war story at the end of the park becomes their motivation, to go further than Logan has ever gone before. Except heading to war was literally the first adventure offered to them when they got off the train.
We then get to Lawrence complaining that the Men in Black has picked up Teddy, and Teddy is a screwed up individual, as he's a former friend of Wyatt.
How does Lawrence know anything about Teddy's backstory? Teddy was given his backstory after the Men in Black picked up Lawrence.
I don't know, maybe they can remotely upload information to the hosts?
If that's the case, why did Ford need to be in front of Teddy when he uploaded his backstory?
You know, for fun. Anyway, the Man in Black sees that Teddy is dying, and so he asks Lawrence why he thinks he's kept him along all of this time.
This is a pretty good question, as Lawrence fulfilled his function by bringing the Man in Black to his daughter. He's dead weight right now, and last time we pointed out that the Man in Black illogically risked Hector's life to save Lawrence. And so why is Lawrence along? Well, we actually get the answer. It's fate. The Man in Black apparently believes in fate.
So Minnie Ford shows up and the Man in Black sends him off to fill his canteen while emptying his water bag. Of course, he could have just filled his canteen in the water bag, but I suppose he found Mini Ford annoying. And then the man in black decides to kill Lawrence and drain him of all of his blood.
Oh yeah, and then we get to everyone's favorite characters, Felix and Sylvester. Man, these guys are awesome. Sylvester is celebrating finishing his work before Felix, and Felix explains that he had a tough job fixing a knife wound, and wonders what they were looking for. Now, yeah, you might think this is pretty dumb since it's the exact same area they were tasked to investigate last time with her, and where they found a bullet that they subsequently forgot to remove. But you gotta remember, Felix and Sylvester are busy dudes. They can't be remembering every random host that mysteriously wakes up and then goes against her basic programming by physically threatening them. I mean, come on. Anyway, Sylvester goes off to eat a ham sandwich and watch some porn, while Felix has a bird in his locker.
And then we get back to the man in black and Teddy, and find out that the man in black has transfused a couple gallons of Lawrence's blood into Teddy.
Okay, first of all, a couple gallons? This is twice the amount of blood in the human body. And second, is the man in black some sort of doctor? If he is, would he be the type of person to make the mistake of thinking there's 2 gallons of blood in the human body? And third, did he bring along an IV or something? Do they let you bring in an IV? How did he foresee this scenario to be this prepared? Fate? And fourth, it can take hours just to transfuse a couple pints into someone's body. 8 pints would take like half the day. And of course, after having this blood transfusion, Teddy's back on his feet in no time. And coincidentally, Lil Ford comes back at the same time.
And then we get back to Dolores, who I suppose is in the modern timeline as no one is around, and she has a flashback of Escalante and remembers this really calm horse. There's been massive gunfire, but this horse only wants to eat some lunch. And then we're back in the 30 years ago timeline, and shots! William asks Dolores if she's alright. The two talk about paths and have a moment, and then are interrupted by Logan and a parade. Logan and Slim let William know that they can meet El Lazo tomorrow and that there's a great brothel in town. And William lets Logan know that he thinks Dolores is different and understands things.
Anyway, Dolores then sees herself in the parade for some reason. Now, this can't be a flashback as we're already 30 years back, and the only reason they've come to Pariah is because of Logan, so Dolores wouldn't be remembering a previous loop. Plus, why would a flashback look back at you in recognition? So, who is this other Dolores?
Well, we know she's been hearing Arnold's voice, which is really her own voice, so I imagine she's just seeing a manifestation of her own consciousness. Whatever the case, it's a bit much for Dolores, and she passes out. And then we have Dolores in the modern timeline with Ford. I can only assume that Stubbs' security team finally tracked down Dolores and brought her here.
Jeez, how many days did that take? They just nabbed her? I want to get this straight. The daughter of Peter Abernathy, the host who went nuts and caused the whole ruckus in episode 1, has been picked up. No one in the chain of command thought it was weird that Dolores went out of her loop, was traveling with a gun, and went all the way to Pariah. I mean, the woodcutter in episode 3 got both Stubbs and Elsie alerted. Somehow Ford intercepted Dolores and no one else heard about it?
I guess he's that good. Anyway, Ford asks Dolores if she's happy in her loop and proceeds to check her hands, which I imagine is for the same espionage device that was put in the woodcutter. She seems to be clean. Ford then proceeds to ask Dolores when the last time she talked to Arnold was, and she says 34 years and 42 days ago, which is a clue that she's been talking to herself and not Arnold. Ford then proceeds to taunt Dolores about being happy in her loop, and takes off. Dolores immediately begins talking to herself again.
Oh yeah, and then we get back to the real story of the show, Felix and Sylvester. So my man Felix is secretly practicing coding on a bird in a room with glass walls. I guess he couldn't find a closet. Anyway, my bro Sylvester then enters and is shocked that Felix would be dumb enough to steal company property. He then lays into him and says he'll never be anything more than a butcher. They then get another body, and it's once again Maeve. She's really been getting herself shot up pretty fast.
Anyway, then we're back with Dolores and William and... Shots! He asks if she's alright.
Now weirdly, there is no mention of Dolores passing out. It was definitely Dolores who was watching the parade with William and Logan in the foreground. She then sees herself and chases after herself and passes out. We even see Maeve for a second, I think, which would prove that this is 30 years ago. But apparently William didn't see any of this, which seems highly unlikely considering how protective he was of Dolores. This is a city of orgies and meatballs. Am I supposed to believe that William lost track of her and then shrugged and went to bed?
Well, I think that perhaps everything with William is a big three-dimensional hallucination of Dolores's, and anything can be seen.
Three-dimensional hallucination? There are scenes of William and Logan that don't even contain Dolores, so no. We saw 30 years ago Dolores pass out, and then they made it into modern Dolores, and then deleted the events from 30 years ago. I mean, I get that they were trying to trick viewers and keep them guessing, but at some point it's just dishonest.
So next the crew meets 30 years ago Lawrence, who Logan wants to talk to so he can give him an introduction to the Confederados so they can get to the war front. Lawrence initially refuses Logan's request, but Dolores then has a flashback to Escalante and then gives Lawrence an odd line about seeking things, and Lawrence changes his mind. And so he gives them a mission to steal some nitroglycerin from some Union soldiers who are coming from this unknown mysterious war, and in return Lawrence will introduce the crew to the Confederados. And so Lawrence gives some new clothes to Dolores, and they're off to rob a wagon. We also see the return of what I assume is the 30 years ago Rebus's gun. Though we aren't really sure, we didn't see her face Rebus 30 years ago. The robbing goes down somewhat poorly, with all the Union soldiers dying, and Slim dying as well, but they do get the nitroglycerin, and we learn that William is a stone-cold killer, and once again we see that Westworld horses stay massively calm during gunfire. Back in Pariah, Slim is mourned by Lawrence for a few seconds, which is a few seconds more than he mourned his wife, and the Confederados are happy to receive their nitro, and everyone celebrates with some naked gold women.
Does anyone actually have a gold paint fetish? Anyone?
Meanwhile with Elsie, she's working with a host with a large penis and then sees the woodcutter roll by.
My god, how incompetent can Teresa be? There's literally one person that the woodcutter needed to not be rolled by, and it was Elsie. I mean, the entire purpose of taking the woodcutter from Elsie and having it incinerated is to prevent Elsie from discovering that it was being used for corporate espionage. And it's rolled right by her. Nice job. Anyway, Elsie then goes downstairs and decides to blackmail a livestock employee to get her access to the woodcutter. The piece of dirt she has on him? He's been fucking the hosts, and she threatens to tell his friends that he's a creepy necroperv. Which I don't really get. The hosts are neither dead or alive. They're hosts. They're robots as far as Elsie is concerned. The worker was just having sex with a sex doll. And in episode 10, we find out his coworkers already know this about him. And the entire Westworld business is a business built on the promise of having sex with sex dolls. At the end of the day, it's just a lot of masturbation. Not to mention, Elsie isn't exactly innocent. But whatever, she is trying to get something from him. Anyway, Elsie finds a problem within 30 seconds of being with the host, which makes me wonder why she didn't catch anything when she was with the host before. Don't they do physical examinations of the hosts? If not, why are they naked? I mean, I get naked for my physical, not for my psychiatrist.
And so Elsie walks into Bernard's office and begins to try to explain the situation. The host had a laser-based satellite uplink. The picture that the woodcutter was carving wasn't stars, but a target.
Yeah, I don't understand this. A target? How exactly is it a target? A target of what? A target where? You can't just have a random picture and claim it's a target. What exactly was the woodcutter shooting at? I imagine a satellite since he had a satellite uplink, but how does that weird picture of dots lead to a satellite? I would say a satellite in front of the constellation of Orion, but it specifically said not to be Orion or stars. I guess we'll never know.
We then get back to William, Logan, and Dolores hanging at an orgy. The Confederado leader says that war is even better than this orgy, and Logan is intrigued. William doesn't want to go anywhere with the Confederados, and Logan suggests that they kill them when they get to the front and join the revolutionaries. The conversation descends quickly into talk of the real world, and we get an abstract idea of their positions. William is an executive vice president, which Logan calls upper middle management.
Upper middle management? An executive VP is more like middle upper management. Middle management is, by definition, below executive management. If William's an executive VP, he's definitely not middle management, but whatever, this is a world where no one seems to know what quality assurance is.
Dolores then takes off and wanders and runs into a tarot card reader, who then becomes her.
Yeah, so what's going on here?
Well, I think Dolores is talking to the voice in her head again, and it's physically manifesting like it did in the parade.
Okay, why is she opening herself up?
Well, you know, for fun, but this is all hallucination. She's just discovering that she's a host. Anyway, Dolores runs out and stumbles upon Lawrence's real plan. He's cheating the Confederados and taking the nitro for himself, smuggling it out in dead bodies. I suppose this is a parallel to the blood transfusion from earlier, though at least here we vaguely see how it's being done with tools.
Wait a minute, I thought the hosts from 30 years ago had a bunch of gears inside. I accept that there's plenty of room for the nitroglycerin in there, but how is pumping on the chest going to bring the nitroglycerin down? He doesn't actually have a heart.
Well, I imagine the workers subconsciously connected it to some other mechanical pump. Anyway, Dolores rushes back to tell William, while Logan and the Confederados are playing the dumbest game possible, catch with a massive bottle of nitroglycerin.
By the way, what would have happened if it were real nitroglycerin? Logan can't get hurt, right? And the explosions are controlled by security. So wouldn't security have prevented the nitro from going off as well?
I assume that safety is written into the narrative, and the hosts probably wouldn't have been allowed to play catch with it in the first place if it were real nitro, or would have been programmed to never drop it. Anyway, William and Dolores decide to escape, seeing Logan and leaving him behind, which Logan finds amusing. They're stopped by the Confederados, and Dolores ends up killing them all.
Now, Dolores seems pretty shocked here, but didn't she already kill Rebus like 3 days ago to get away from the ranch with the gun?
Well, to be fair, we don't actually know if she killed 30 years ago Rebus. All we really know is that she showed up at William and Logan's camp with Rebus's gun. I suppose it's possible that she simply grabbed Rebus's gun 30 years ago and ran away without killing him.
Nonetheless, doesn't this confirm that Dolores has been breaking her program with regards to killing for 30 years, making the whole Violent Delights incident pointless?
Well, she does kill that fly at the beginning of the first episode. Maybe the Violent Delights incident is about allowing her to kill real live human beings.
Except Hector and Armistice and every other host started killing people without the Violent Delights line. At some point, we have to accept that the first 4 episodes of Westworld just don't fit with the latter 6. Violent delights, buried guns, mysterious riddles, searching for something true. All of this is dropped for trauma reminding people of past loops, and the Man in Black following the wild goose chase of Wyatt.
Regardless, Dolores and William jump on the train to get out of town and find Lawrence on board. Dolores threatens to blow them all up with nitro, and Lawrence surrenders. He and William then drink, as Dolores sees the maze branded on a coffin. I guess the coffin makers were at Escalante. We then flash forward to modern Dolores, apparently following in the path of her previous loop.
Wait, what? Wasn't Dolores picked up by Stubbs' security team and brought to Ford? They decided to put her back into Westworld at Pariah with Rebus's gun and change her into shirt and pants.
Dude, Ford planned it all. He can do whatever he wants.
It's just so pointless. If he wants her to remember Escalante, he can just release her at Escalante. I mean, the only reason she's on this deviation in the first place is that the Man in Black happened to screw with her. She remembers him right before shooting Rebus. So this is not part of Ford's plan. Why take her out of that deviation and then put her back in at the exact same spot, with a change of clothes to boot? And what did Ford tell Stubbs and security? Even though this isn't Dolores' storyline, please put her in the middle of Pariah for no reason? Oh, and give her Rebus's gun, and a change of clothes. I know you're super concerned about the hosts rebelling, but just look the other way.
And then we have the Man in Black and Teddy coming to a rest stop and having a conversation with Ford. By the way, the whiskey brought over is Lawrence whiskey for some reason. I guess putting more Lawrence inside Teddy makes him energetic. Ford then asks the Man in Black what exactly they're doing, and Teddy says they're looking for Wyatt because he kidnapped Dolores, the latter part being the Man in Black's lie. The Man in Black says that Ford's stories needed some embellishment.
Wait, so the Man in Black knows this is Ford's storyline? I thought he was searching for the maze and Arnold's storyline. If he knows this is a Ford storyline, what the hell is he doing?
Well, it seems that the Man in Black thinks that Wyatt is a new storyline designed to protect the maze from the Man in Black. Anyway, the Man in Black tells Ford that he's searching for Arnold's final story's purpose, and Ford decides to re-energize Teddy, and they go on their way.
And finally we get back to my favorite storyline with Felix trying to get his bird to wake up. It seems to work, and it flies over to Maeve, who has also woken up, and holds the bird on her finger. I guess this is a Snow White reference or something.
So Chad, you don't think it's a bit weird that Maeve's personality has completely shifted? I mean, she was practically going mad with the discovery of a new world, and now she's calm and collected.
Arr, I don't know what you're talking about, matey.